Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're talking about Spider Man and his amazing friends. But before we get into it, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell, and leave us a comment. We've got an awesome community here, and it's all thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. With all that said, let's dive in. Prologue to this one takes place in Earl's Arcade in New York City, where Flash Thompson is playing the Video Man arcade game and beats it. Earl, the arcade's owner, yells at everyone there that he'll be closing in a few minutes. And Flash says that's just enough time to beat Video Man again. As Flash walks up to the game, a hidden camera on the cabinet transmits footage of Thompson to the hidden headquarters of the classic Spider Man villain known as Electro. Anyway, so Flash Thompson beats the game again and then heads out onto the sidewalk where he sees Firestar, aka Angelica Jones, Iceman, aka Bobby Drake, and Spider Man, aka Peter Parker, in their secret identities. As they're walking and talking, Thompson runs to catch up to him so he can talk to Angelica. Shockingly, she agrees to go to the library with him, to which a jealous Iceman asks what's so great about Flash Thompson. Peter starts naming off everything Angelica might see in Flash, and Iceman is bummed. Peter says, despite all those things, though, Flash is still a meathead. Electro goes from what we saw him doing last, which was watching footage of Thompson, to watching footage of the other locations where his other Video Man arcade cabinets were delivered and accepted. Electro says to himself that tonight he's going to finally unleash Video Man upon the world. And then he activates the various gadgets that fill his expansive headquarters, and he commands Video Man to strike. And shockingly, Video Man exits the dimension that the Blood of Heroes RPG refers to as cyberspace, which is the same dimension that Captain N, the Game Master, would refer to as Videoland. And it's the same world that the Tron movies refer to as the grid. And just as is the case with those, here too, travel between these dimensions is difficult, but not impossible. And as such, Video Man arrives in the real world in Earl's Arcade, crackling with otherworldly power. And speaking of things that are shocking, Flash Thompson would actually rather play the Video Man game than spend time with Firestar. She calls him a creep as an addicted Thompson hurries back to the arcade. But this time, Video Man is waiting on him. So Flash Thompson screams and tries to run away. But Video Man uses his 10 APs of Energy Blast to attack Flash Thompson. Flash is struck by what looks like two-dimensional yellow dotted lines, just like in the game. Flash is hit and takes a few points of damage, but he's also knocked through a wooden fence across the street. Firestar hears Flash screaming and runs back to Earl's Arcade, where she sees Video Man and decides there's no time to waste. So she uses her Insta Change right there on the spot. But Flash was not knocked out, so he watches her transform, and now Flash Thompson knows Firestar's secret identity. Meanwhile, Angelica engages Video Man in combat, and Video Man attacks her, but he can't seem to land a hit. On Firestar's turn, she rolls to hit him and gets what she needs, but Video Man has the dispersal power, so her attacks pass harmlessly through him. On the following turn, Video Man switches over from the aforementioned yellow energy blast to a red I beam, which also misses. But he does manage to strike Flash Thompson with the red beam, and for a second, Flash glows red, then vanishes. And this is when we learn that Video Man has the dimension travel power, and it has a limitation that it can only cause things to travel between the real world and the video world. So in this case, Flash Thompson is banished to the video world. Flash then appears on the screen of a nearby arcade cabinet, yelling and freaking out. Firestar says, Flash, no, then turns to Video Man and calls him a monster, then shoots at him again. But just as before, her fire passes harmlessly through him, striking an arcade cabinet, destroying it. On Video Man's turn, he turns into pure electricity and enters an electrical outlet on the wall. Firestar says, I've got to go get the guys, then flies away. And that brings us to the main plot. She flies around until she sees Iceman and Spider-Man and their secret identities. So after she checks to make sure that no one's looking, she lands next to him and tells him what happened. Spider-Man says, You've got to be kidding. Firestar says she wishes she was and insists they suit up. So Peter Parker runs off to change into his Spider-Man costume, while Iceman uses his Insta-Change to transform into his body of ice. Spidey swings back their way on a web line, and then the Spider Friends chase after Video Man, who is traveling along the power lines. Meanwhile, Electro uses the gadgets in his expansive headquarters and downloads Flash Thompson from the Video Man arcade cabinet, which Electro himself designed. And Flash is now in one of the computers in Electro's headquarters. So Electro loads up a game of Pong, and every time the ball hits Flash, Electro says that that is him scoring a point. And once Electro earns 100 points, he will delete Flash for good. So Flash Thompson jumps and dodges and fights for his life, while Electro watches in amusement. Meanwhile, Spider-Man, Iceman, and Firestar catch up to Video Man at the NYU physics lab, where Firestar shoots more fire at Video Man, but again, it passes harmlessly through him. Iceman does the exact same thing and gets the exact same result. Spider-Man holds action, while Video Man fires back using those segmented yellow energy blast dotted line things from earlier. Electro remotely orders Video Man to forget the heroes and just grab the space alloy. So Video Man digitizes the new alloy, transporting it into the video world. Then he rides the phone lines back to Electro's headquarters, where he then uses dimension travel again to transfer the alloy from the video world into the real world. Electro sees the huge pile of alloy now sitting in his headquarters and is extremely pleased. Meanwhile, the Spider Friends go back to Firestar's apartment, where a secret lever causes various bits of furniture to rotate around, revealing crime-fighting devices. So they use the computer here to do a search, and they learn that the person who made the Video Man arcade game is Electro. They also figure out everybody who received one of his cabinets. Spider-Man says he's going to check the first place on the list, which is the penthouse of a millionaire. Iceman says he'll check out the currency exchange. Firestar says she'll go to the military base. So Iceman uses his famous ice slides to head over to the exchange where a robbery is taking place. One of the masked robbers tells everyone to freeze, and Iceman says, Did I hear someone say freeze? As he slides into the room and shoots freeze rays at the thugs. Iceman asks the guy in charge about the arcade game, And he said it showed up one day, even though nobody ordered it. And since nobody had to pay at the time of delivery, one of his employees just signed for it. Just then, Video Man emerges from the cabinet and attacks Iceman with the Dimension Travel Ray. Iceman is then transported into the arcade game. Then Electro brings him to the computers in where his headquarters is at. Then Video Man breaks into the vault at the currency exchange, and he sends a huge amount of gold bars into cyberspace. Then he returns to Electro's headquarters and moves the gold there alongside the pile of the space alloy. Electro orders Video Man to then go to the military base. Firestar also went to the military base just as they launched a heat-seeking missile. So, of course, it changes direction and chases Firestar, who in turn flies to a remote area where she sets the hottest fire she can, then flies away, and the missile hits the fire and explodes. Video Man emerges from the arcade game at the base, and when he does, Firestar is asking a bunch of thirsty soldiers about the game. Then Video Man surprise attacks her, sending her to where Iceman is, on the grid. Video Man then robs the military cargo area, digitizing a bunch of spools of copper wire. Meanwhile, Spider-Man web slings onto the roof of a skyscraper that has its own park area and swimming pool. He enters the building and sees a room full of arcade games and says, "So this is how a millionaire lives." Just then, Video Man comes out of the arcade cabinet there and attacks Spider-Man, but Spider-Man dodges the attack. Then he declares active dodge, which means his dexterity doubles for now. And during that time, Video Man fires several shots, all of which miss their mark. Finally, Spider-Man shoots webs through Video Man, and they stick to the cabinet behind him. Then Spider-Man yanks and pulls the cabinet into Video Man's back, and something interesting happens. Video Man enters this arcade cabinet against his will. On Video Man's turn, he exits the game and dives into a wall outlet. Video Man then comes out of a different wall outlet in a room with a bunch of silver bullion, and like before, he transports the silver back to Electro's headquarters. Electro then types on the screen of the Video Man arcade game, telling Spider-Man that he captured Iceman and Firestar, and Spider-Man is next. So Spidey is reading the message when Electro presses a button, activating the bomb that he hid in that arcade cabinet. It goes off in Spider-Man's face, and as one would expect, that camera is destroyed. So Electro just assumes Spider-Man is dead, and he laughs about it, then says he'll torture Iceman and Firestar next. So just as he forced Flash Thompson to play Pong, he forces Firestar and Iceman to play Asteroids. To their surprise, their powers work here, so they shoot the asteroids. Electro is annoyed, and then he places them in a game called Pole Position, and he forces them to race or be deleted. So they race. Electro then cheats and deletes a section of roadway right before they cross the finish line. So Iceman makes a replacement road using his ice. Electro admits that that was pretty clever. Then he goes to check on Flash Thompson, who is exhausted. Back at the military base, Spider-Man, who survived the explosion, is investigating the theft and learns Video Man stole copper. Spider-Man then deduces what Electro is up to. Meanwhile, in the pole position world, Iceman and Firestar pull a Wreck-It Ralph and figure out how to leave their game. They travel through electrical wires, sort of the way that Video Man does, and they end up in one of the other computer screens in Electro's headquarters. They keep searching until eventually they find Flash Thompson and rescue him. Flash says, "Angelica, boy, am I glad to see you." Iceman is shocked that Flash knows her secret identity. Firestar says they'll have to deal with that later, and they take Flash and leave. Meanwhile, Electro builds a gadget with power reserve using all of those materials that he had Video Man steal. Then he transfers all of the electricity in New York City into himself, which causes a blackout, except for one street light, which is directly over Electro's headquarters and is still on, because this section of the power grid is where all the energy was transferred to. And all the lights and computers in the expansive headquarters are still on. So Spider-Man goes to where there's still light and then rips a hole in the ground and jumps down through the sort of manhole-sized opening that he made. And Spider-Man tries to fight Electro. And here's where things go wrong in this adventure. In DC Heroes, Power Reserve makes Electro's lightning raise in terms of how many APs of damage it does. But your APs of lightning are also what you would use to aim with. So unlike the cartoon episode that this was based on, our Spider-Man doesn't have plot armor. So Electro shoots Spider-Man with a massive bolt of lightning, knocking him out. And Electro wins. Which brings us to the epilogue. In the video game, where Firestar, Iceman, and Flash Thompson are at, they can't leave through the power lines because the blackout acts like a dead end. But in Captain N, the Game Master, they establish that in this other dimension, every single video game world has a warp zone that can take them somewhere else. So the heroes find the nearest warp zone and enter it. And that's where we ended this game session. So tune in tomorrow to see what happens next. From all of us here at the longest running superhero role-playing game on Earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in tomorrow's adventure. Bye.